Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Rangers Review afternoon briefing. You could say a breaking news briefing. Also, the big news this afternoon, just moments ago, is that tonight's game against Ross County has been postponed. It's due to the adverse weather up north, which means that Ross County, who set off today for the game, have been unable to get down to Ibrox. The match scheduled for 7:45 tonight will be rescheduled. A statement from Rangers stated that Rangers can confirm this evening's Scottish Premiership fixture with Ross County has been postponed, despite the Ibrox playing surface being in good condition and ready to host the match. Adverse weather conditions on the A9 means our visitors have been unable to reach Glasgow. A new date for the fixture will be confirmed in due course. And a Ross County statement on Twitter said, following consultation with Police Scotland regarding today's weather conditions on the A9, this evening's match against Rangers has been postponed. This is all due to Storm Gerrit, which is wreaking havoc, particularly up north. So no game tonight, gentlemen. I'm joined by Jonny and Joshua. In one respect, Jonny, disappointing not to get points on the board. You can look at it a different way. However, Rangers will be well rested ahead of the derby at the weekend. And of course, we all know the squad situation with injuries and what have you. So it might be a blessing in disguise. Your reaction to the news?
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, first of all, it smacks of unprofessionalism, unfortunately, that Ross County are in this situation in the first place. I don't know quite what their story is in terms of why they weren't staying in Glasgow last night, or why they have set off so late in the day in terms of the bus not being able to make it down. I think it's been well known across the media anyway. If you look at the publishing times of articles about this storm and the effects that it's going to have on the UK in terms of northern Scotland, I can go back 48 hours, 24 hours, 16 hours, article after article about the havoc this is going to wreak. So how Ross County have got themselves in a situation where they've not been able to get away sharp enough to avoid the worst of it, I'm not sure. I don't quite understand that now. I'm sure they'll put out a message explaining it. But there are a number of positives as well, Derek. From a Rangers point of view, you're getting plenty of rest ahead of the Old Firm game. From a fans' point of view, I think, to be fair on Ross County and Rangers, this news breaking at around 1 o'clock gives plenty of time to ensure that you're not going to be too put out by the fact that the game has been postponed. You know, I think the vast majority of people that were going to be travelling are able to either turn around quite sharpish or not set out at all and make other plans for the evening. So in terms of the fact that it's been done early and not late, you know, we've seen in the SPFL over the last couple of weeks fixtures that have been cancelled very, very late, and the situation that's caused for fans, at least this one is early. And from a point of view of Rangers being fully rested and not having that disadvantage, because obviously Celtic had a rest day today, now Rangers have got that advantage over Celtic in terms of the amount of rest time between games. Previously, Celtic had that advantage if Rangers had played tonight, but that's been neutered. So you go into this Old Firm game, which is absolutely massive at Parkhead, knowing that you've had a reasonable rest from the 24th and the last game they played, and you've got to say that sets it up nicely for Rangers to go there and do something special. But time will tell on that one.
Yeah, Scott Hammond with the point says, not often do I agree with Jonny, but 100% strange why County hadn't already travelled. Yeah, no idea why they never travelled down last night. Hopefully we'll find out the reason why. But this is pretty amateurish. I think that a club is travelling down now and cannot reach the ground. We all know about the weather conditions. They should have taken that into account and headed down, make sure that we're down in Glasgow for the game. I'd imagine they'd have been staying in Glasgow tonight anyway after the game. It is a long journey back to Dingwall. Joshua, the point though that could be a blessing in disguise heading into the derby at the weekend. Celtic, of course, played yesterday. Rangers will have that a bit of a break since that win at windswept Fir Park. Could be a good thing, perhaps.
Yeah, and it was obviously Chris was at Fir Park, and I think you saw it, and you saw it actually at the end of the game when the players were going over to the fans, and they were struggling to kind of make it over to the main stand, just how kind of bad the weather was. So Philippe Clement strikes me as the type of manager who just want to play a lot of games, and maybe the squad's in that state of mind as well. We don't know the injury situation about a couple of players. There could be a surprise in there before Parkhead. I think it might just edge more in the blessing in disguise side for Rangers, Derek, because they have played, not only because they've played so many games, but you're looking at areas of the pitch like centre forward position, like the middle of the pitch. Not only are Rangers light for options, but they're light for options in terms of actually bringing someone on off the bench to try and rotate things around 60, 70 minutes. If it was a difficult game tonight, which it could well be in those types of conditions, then it might well be a bit more of a blessing in disguise. It's done early enough. I agree with you. It's strange that Ross County didn't stay. Maybe Christmas Eve comes into it. You never know. Maybe they thought they'd just have enough time to get down. Maybe the away fans, as you say, they've not put out kind of their statement on behalf of things yet. So we'll wait and see what they have to say. But would agree with the sentiment with what Jonny says. I think, though, if you're looking at it objectively, if you're Philippe Clement, you probably think, okay, it's frustrating that you fall more points behind. You have 2 games in hand before you go to Parkhead. Can't go top on the basis of points, that does play into things. That is a factor. But you don't concede any more injuries, and as we know with Rangers at the moment, just playing a game increases the risk of that, and you probably go into it a lot fresher. And considering that these players have played games so repeatedly, 9 games since the international break, 8 already, that I think probably is a bit more of a blessing in disguise in hindsight, even if it's frustrating for people who want to go to the football on the 27th.
Yeah, especially supporters. Ian Hamilton with the point. I feel sorry for some Bears who left early and travelled. My dad was one of them. He was down visiting my brother in Devon, of all places. I just phoned him to tell him the bad news, and he was around 30 miles from Hamilton. He'd left at 6 in the morning to head back home.
He had his times right then, Derek, didn't he? He was out early enough.
He was early, yep, absolutely. But gutted at the news. But he also looked on the bright side as well, that it might be beneficial with regards to the squad and some much needed rest. It remains to be seen when that game will be rescheduled, Jonny. But the game's certainly stacking up for Rangers as it stands. 2 games in hand on Celtic, who are 5 points clear. Rangers will go to Parkhead at the weekend, hoping to claw that back in some way, shape or form. I think Hibs is one of the games in hand, if I'm not mistaken. Is it the 20th of January, somewhere around there?
I think it's that week. It's after Dumbarton away in the Cup, and then I think it's Hibs in the midweek, I think.
Yeah. So this game, it puts it's a huge game anyway, Jonny, but even extra significance on it. Rangers can go there. I think they'll go there with confidence as well, even though this game isn't on this evening. I thought it was a very professional job they did at the weekend against Motherwell, and they will be fully rested. And let's hope that perhaps maybe 1 or 2 players might be back in contention for the game.
Yeah. I think you've got to look at Rangers' injury situation and say it's not ideal. So playing a game tonight, given how beat down the bare bones they are, particularly in central midfield positions, could have led to a situation where you're going into Parkhead and particularly worried from a Rangers point of view about who you're going to field in there. Have we had any more information about John Lundstrom? I've been a little bit out the loop in terms of I've not watched the pressers from post Motherwell. I've been away, so do we have anything on John Lundstrom, Josh?
No, I think it's the same old, and Clement's kind of done this, but he doesn't like putting timeframes on injuries. He says, which obviously kind of keeps things in the dark as well. So it's the same with Ryan Jack. He's not definitively said he definitely will not be able to play that game, but he's also not said he's going to be back. So no latest on that from Clement in his press conferences.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would want to be going into the Old Firm at Parkhead with a Dowell, Sterling central midfield if I didn't, if you didn't have to. I think both those lads have done really well, and I don't mean to decry them, but you're wanting a bit of experience in there. You're going right into the Lions' den. From the point of view of both these lads, they've not played at Parkhead before. It's an intimidating atmosphere. I think it'll be tasty, to say the least. And you don't know how players are going to react, particularly in their first encounter. I know I've used this example before, but it's just because it springs in the mind so readily. Fernando Rickson at Parkhead back all those years ago was subbed after 23 minutes by Dick Advocat. Was a very good Rangers player in the end, a top quality footballer who was a Dutch international, but who melted under the pressure of that first Old Firm game. The relentless nature of it, the physicality of it, the 100 miles an hour aspect to it. That is something that can catch players off guard. And you're never sure with debutants quite how they're going to react. I think that's why managers over the years have sometimes been reluctant to throw even really good players into an Old Firm, because there's always that kind of roll of the dice as to how they might just perceive it. So, yeah, I think the midfield is a concern, but if you can get Ryan Jack or John Lundstrom back, especially Lundstrom, given how he's played under Clement, then I think that suddenly makes Rangers midfield look a lot stronger. I think Lundstrom will probably make it, just from the soundings that we've already heard. I think it'll be probably touch and go, but I think he'll do everything in his powers to be ready. And John Lundstrom's a robust guy, and I think if he has to take a painkiller injection or if he has to take some tablets to get himself through it, then I'm sure he will. Because he knows just how important it is. If Rangers go to Parkhead and win, you're absolutely putting a marker down for this title. You really, really are. And that would really blow things up. I think you'll look at Celtic again yesterday. 3-0 win, but struggled up until half-time, unable to create the moment of inspiration that led to the goal. And then the goal comes, it's extremely fortuitous. It's a perfect time for them just after half-time. And they find their confidence and go on. And I think they were pretty good in that second half. But again, they're a team that if they struggle, if they go up against a low block, they struggle. And I think if Rangers can be sure to keep it very tight early doors, I think that atmosphere and that maelstrom that is Parkhead can be turned against Celtic.
Interesting. Just going back to the fixture and the conditions, Joshua, you're in. Is it Pitlochry you are at this moment in time?
No, I'm not. I'm in just north of Inverness, so I'm close to the scene itself. I think the Dromocta Pass is closed, which is and anyone who knows that road knows it's not a good road.
No gates are down.
Yes, it's not a good road at the best time. So it may well be that. They've been sitting in that for a while. As we say, they've not put out a statement yet, so we don't know. But it's not good conditions. I don't think it's good conditions anywhere at all. And Rangers did say in their statement that the Ibrox pitch was fine and playable, and no doubt about that. You saw though that Motherwell game in the second half. There was points where, even in the first half as well, there was points where it was difficult to just play a game of football on that. So whether it would have been as bad as that tonight, I don't know. But yeah, I can confirm the conditions up here are not good if you're looking to get down to Glasgow.
Yeah, I remember doing a game before. I think it was an Inverness game. I drove up A9, brilliant when the sun is shining. But when we drove back down, it was like Star Wars. It was driving snow, and I did. My life flashed before my eyes, I've got to say, around about the Sloch Summit, I think it is. Not ideal driving conditions, I've got to say. So, do not head out on the roads, folks, unless you definitely have to. I think that is the message. Big hello to Nick Lenny. He says, first time live due to Dubai time difference. Great to see you lads in real time. Bring on the Old Firm, he says. And just on that fixture congestion, interesting point as well, getting straight into the Europa 16 has been crucial. Absolutely, it's a game that Rangers don't need to navigate. We can look forward to that in March time. I think the draw will be around about the end of February when we'll find out the opponents to that one. Another bit of worrying news, you could say, Joshua, from the weekend was Connor Goldson. Coming off against Motherwell. Philip Clement explained that I hope he'll be okay. Felt a little bit in his groin at the end of the game, but we will see. We will make an assessment tomorrow. I don't know if players will come back for sure. Not many. We'll see in the next couple of days. It's day by day seeing what the situation is. Touch wood, he is okay, Joshua, because Rangers need him to be okay for Saturday.
Yeah, it looked precautionary to me, and I know Cameron Carter-Vickers came off for Celtic yesterday, and that probably looked quite similar, similar time or maybe a little bit earlier for Celtic, but both in the second half. I thought Goldson has played a lot of football, not one to pull up. Obviously, he's had more injury issues in the last couple of years. We'll find out the day before the game, which is the 29th, when it's press conference day. Rangers have not had luck, so wouldn't count on that in this situation either. But it didn't look like he was unable to walk or anything, Derek. It looked like he'd felt something and didn't want to take a risk. So you've got to hope that's the case, because we don't need any more pieces of evidence to show that Rangers are a better team when Connor Goldson is in that defence. We've seen it repeatedly over the last number of seasons, as recently as Dundee a couple of weeks ago. And especially given the nature of the centre midfield, I think that we spoke about this quite a lot, Derek, the way that Rangers are playing in the midfield, and you even saw it in the Motherwell game as well. They're not really playing it through the midfield all that much. So although Sterling and Dowell would not be an ideal midfield two going to Parkhead, and I know Dowell, I think he shows some nice touches on the ball, scores a great goal, which we shouldn't miss on the 24th as well, and not something that a goal-scoring midfielder is not something Rangers have had in abundance over the last few seasons. Sterling, I think, is a game that could suit him quite well, because, as mentioned, I think Rangers will try to go over the block quite directly into Sima or around on the right-hand side, and the midfield will be more about second balls and trying to get up the pitch. And when Rangers do get into the final third, secure that territory. So I think Sterling will have an important role there. And Dowell as well, he actually had a good defensive game against St Johnstone when he played at home. Different task in Old Firm game. Totally agree with Jonny. And in an ideal circumstance, you'd definitely have John Lundstrom in there. But it's credit to, I think, Clement, that Rangers have had these non-ideal circumstances really since, if you think back to his second game, Sparta Prague away, where he had no left back and you had Abdallah playing at left wing back, what was quite a difficult 90 minutes for Rangers. So they have found solutions quite repeatedly, and I think that is reflected in the way that they're playing. It's not as if you've got the game even at Motherwell a couple of days ago. It's not as if you've got Sterling and Dowell sitting deep and trying to take passes off Rangers centre-backs. Rarely doing that whatsoever. Even when Lundstrom's in there, he'll drop into the back three at points, but Rangers aren't really going through the midfield. If it is to be those two, not ideal circumstances, but I do think they come into it in pretty good form. And what Clement has done when he says he's working solutions, I don't think it's just a case of picking players and who can fit in and doing what he can, but it's the tactical setup as well, and the way that he's been quite pragmatic. That's maybe not the most long-term thinking, but it can't be at the moment. At the moment, it's just about trying to get results. But I agree with Jonny. I have a sneaky feeling that if John Lundstrom has any inkling of being fit for that fixture, if he has to take painkiller injections or whatever it may be, he's done that before, so could well see him in there. Even just if he was available in the squad, that gives you an option, because God forbid if one of those two were to get injured, you've got Bailey Rice, who's on the bench against Motherwell a few days ago, but he's not played at all into Clement, so to throw him into that fixture,
not chucking him in that game.
Yeah, well, but then what's your alternative? Realistically, what's your alternative? If Dowell's not played much football, let's say Dowell was to pull up after 20-30 minutes.
Leon King is one, I think.
Leon King, yeah. That's maybe your alternative, but again, he's not that limits your. If it was to be King and Sterling in there, then that limits your ball playing options quite a lot.
I think Ben Davies could maybe move up into central defensive midfield if you're really at a push, but
I would worry about that, to be honest.
There's no doubt people would be worried about it, Derek. I'm just saying it. If you had no other options.
Cliff says, and there's a few people suggesting Suter in midfield. I've seen a few suggestions, especially last week, about possibly John Suter moving in there. Another area of the pitch, Jonny, where Rangers are light in numbers, is up front. Cyriel Dessers, I thought he was unlucky not to get at least on the score sheet at least once at the weekend. Two good finishes, offside calls. They were marginal, I've got to say. But he's looked a lot better under Philippe Clement. To such an extent, I was, for one, saying Rangers should be looking for a buyer in January. I'd keep the big man around. I think he can contribute, and Rangers will be looking to him on Saturday to lead the line. Fingers crossed he can stay on side. Do you have any reservations about him going up against that Celtic defence?
Well, I don't think you've got any other options, Derek, unless you're going to throw some craziness at me. Something more controversial than Ben Davies in midfield. See what you've got in your back pocket there.
James Tavernier up front.
Listen, Dessers, I'm not going to change my mind on Dessers, guys. I don't think Dessers is good enough. I've not seen enough from him, even in the last 5 or 6 games, to suggest that he's the guy to take Rangers forward. I don't think he's perhaps quite as bad as we thought. coming out of that 3-1 defeat to Aberdeen at Ibrox, when it all seemed to be crashing down around us this season, and Cyriel Dessers was kind of at the heart of it as this player to come in for a significant sum of money alongside Sam Lammers, and it looked like it was money wasted. He's obviously come onto a game under Clement. I think, 6-12, and previous to that, I think it was 3-15 under Michael Beale. So clearly, there's been an improvement there, and that has to be recognised. But I think Cyriel Dessers was born offside. So to say he's unlucky belies the evidence of the last 25 games or whatever it's been, 27 games, because the guy finds himself offside so often that I tend to be less charitable about him being unlucky with those goals. I just think it's par for the course that he moves too quickly in these situations and gets caught out. To me, he's neither strong enough to be the kind of target man, nor is he quick enough to be the guy that's stretching the play. He's kind of everything and nothing. And that's the biggest problem for me with Cyriel Dessers. I don't think it's due to a lack of application. He's working hard. To me, it's clear that his fitness has improved. I think that's one of the things that will be at the heart of his improvement over the last few games under the new manager. He's pressing all the time now, and it's lasting for a reasonable period of the game. And he's definitely trying his best. But to be a Rangers number 9 and to make it work over the long term, over a 4-year contract or whatever that contract would be for any number 9, I personally don't think Cyriel Dessers is good enough, and I think that they're going to have to find a better option in there. Now, it's clear that a striker needs to come in, at least one, probably two, in the window anyway. But I would still look to move Dessers on, I have to say. I don't think he's the right fit for Rangers, and even though he's doing well and he's a lovely lad, I've spoken to him, it's just a no. And I hope he goes out there and proves me wrong. And I think if he went out and scored a double against Celtic, people would rightly say, no, we're going to reassess all this. You saw that wonderful goal he scored against Betis. That was a moment of sheer quality. And if you can see more like that, then I'm open to changing my mind. But based on what I've seen, that's where I am.
Yeah, what gives me encouragement is historically he is a slow starter at clubs and comes onto a game. Joshua, his numbers are there under the new manager. He is getting numbers. He is getting the goals. As I mentioned, I think he was unfortunate not to get on the score sheet at the weekend. Your opinion on it, Cyriel Dessers?
Yeah, and the second one was really close, wasn't it?
Yes.
But the after the St Johnstone game, I think the stat we put out was he had 1.02 goals per 90 under Clement, and I think it was 5 games he's played by that point, which was the best in the league. Obviously, that will have dropped off after the Motherwell game. I think I agree with a lot of what Jonny says. Where I disagree is that I think Dessers came in and everyone thought, probably because he's replacing Morelos, and when someone comes into a football club, you just automatically put them in their kind of frame. Everyone thought he'd be this physical striker who would bring others into play, and he has looked at points. He's looked really physically limited. I think second half against Dundee, where Clement said after that his physical levels weren't quite there yet. But he's not a player who's really going to get you up the pitch, and then he's not got the pace to run you up the pitch. So I think what's helped him is. And you saw this in Clement's first game against Hibs, when people have played closer to him. And I think even more than that, when he's had more runners in behind. Because before, if Rangers are playing with a narrow shape, I don't think there was many. There wasn't many runners in the last line to stretch play. Obviously, Simo was playing a little bit less beforehand as well. And Dessers said after, I think it was the Livingston away game, he said, I'm better as a striker when I'm facing goal. And I remember hearing that and thinking, really? Like, that doesn't seem, we've seen you facing goal and you've been caught offside repeatedly. But if you look at his goals, I think 5 in the league since Clement has arrived. All 5 of them have arrived on the left-hand side of the goal. 4 of them have arrived with his left foot. If you think of his goal against Livingston, Dundee, St Johnstone, all quite similar finishes. A lot quite composed finishes through the legs of the keeper, as was the case away in Betis. But he's a player who I think he's never going to be on the eye. He's never going to look like a player who's going to take a game away from the opposition because you don't think he's going to outrun this defender. That move against Betis has been an outlier. We've seen him do that in the past of his career, Derek. And I think he tried it in the home game against Motherwell where he scored that deflected goal and it didn't come off. And it's not a move we've seen him try so far. Since he managed to pull it off in Betis, but he's not someone who you think he's not really dominating centre backs physically. But then you can't really argue with those numbers. And what I think has been quite good, and you saw this in the St John's goal in particular, I thought his movement was really good for that. The way he gets in front of the defender, kind of blocks his eye line and then goes behind him. And we've seen that for quite a few goals. Again, that Hibs goal and Clement's first game where he linked up with Cantwell. So I think that is his strength. He's probably suffered a little bit from being misprofiled because everyone thought of him as this kind of big physical back-to-goal striker. And then also because, as Jonny says, he's been caught offside so repeatedly. Before the Motherwell game, I did think that was getting better, whether it's just because the game was more stretched, when I never think that really tends to suit him. I don't know. I think he's shown enough to show that he can contribute over the course of the season. If he continues with the goals, then it's obviously hard to argue with. And I also thought that his link-up play at Motherwell was a bit better. Kind of one of the first times we've seen him drop into midfield that repeatedly. I still think, and we spoke about this before, Danilo's injury, I still think Danilo will be Rangers' long-term number 9. I know he had a few finishing issues before he was injured, but we've still only seen him play a handful of games really for Rangers because of those 2 issues with injuries. So I think we've seen more of what Dessers is about, and it's more about his movement, especially on that left-hand side, facing goal with more forward runners around him to help him when he's isolated in a game. I don't think that suits him at all, but I don't think we've seen enough yet to say, yes, he's definitely your number 9 for the rest of the season, or yes, he's definitely got a long-term future at Rangers, because, it's not just this 6 games of evidence. Obviously, we've had a number of games before this, which has kind of solidified some opinions before this scoring run that he's been on.
Yeah, well, he will be the man to lead the line at Parkhead and also at Ibrox when Kilmarnock come to town. Elvis, who lives in Warrington, says, was it Wigan to travel and turn back? Thank God it wasn't halfway up the road. It's ideal. Elvis, not too far away at all. Just on that thing that Jonny said there, needing 2 strikers, I totally agree. Rangers need to bring in 2 forwards in January. There's a lot of comments coming in. A bit of noise in the last few days, Jonny, about Kevin Van Veen, formerly of Motherwell, joined Groningen in the summer for a decent fee Motherwell got for him. He hasn't settled, which is a bit strange. His partner is back in Motherwell or the UK, something, and he's a bit homesick because he's just had a new baby. McFarlane with the point. Any truth in the Van Veen loan rumours? Seems unlikely to me. This is seen a bit of speculation over the last couple of days. I would be surprised if Rangers were to Kevin Van Veen. Jonny, is this a viable option for you? Do you think Rangers should look to bring him in a short-term deal?
Well, I think if you've got to make moves in January and you've got a limited budget and you want to ensure that you've got some money to change the squad up in the summer, when I think you can get better bang for your buck, I can understand why Rangers might look into a loan deal. And if you're looking at a loan deal for a striker, you're going to want someone who you know is going to be able to score in the Scottish Premiership, which, let's be honest, is all that really matters. All that really matters. The Europa League is a fantastic plus point, but Rangers have overperformed by hitting the last 16. I don't think many people would have expected them to top a group with Sparta Prague and Betis. So to get to that point, you can say anything from here's a bonus. The Scottish Cup's obviously there to be won, but the Premiership is where it's at. So if you can go out and get a striker who has performed to a really, really high level in the Premiership on a loan, I don't think it's stupid to look at that. Now, I watch quite a lot of Kevin Van Veen, and I actually really like him. He's got quick feet. He's a big guy. He's very skillful, capable of producing something out of the top drawer. He's not a kind of poacher. He's a more all-round player than that. I think, like a Marko Arnautovic type, obviously nowhere near as good, but very skillful with the ball at his feet, despite being tall, capable of a moment of magic, but maybe a little bit inconsistent. When he was in Scotland, when he was playing for Motherwell, when he was the big fish in the small pond, he was absolutely terrific for them, and he scored goal after goal. And you look at his numbers, they speak for themselves. I don't think he would be expensive. So I, for one, Derek, would look at that and say, for a 5-month loan, it makes absolute sense. Now, I've not heard anything from inside Rangers. I don't know anything about whether or not there's any truth in this. I don't know the player's agent. I've got no inside information, but if that was one of 2 strikers coming in, that would make absolute sense to me.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I watched him when he was at Scunthorpe and he was hopeless. He goes to Motherwell and it just sets a heather alight. It was fantastic for them. So it seems it'd be quite a turnaround in fortunes to be struggling away, battling for a game at Scunthorpe and starting for Rangers. But who knows? Joshua, you a fan of Kevin Van Veen?
Yeah, from what I've heard, I'm told it's unlikely to happen. So I don't know if it's one that's a player that we're likely to be talking about too much in January. Did agree with Jonny. He scored a lot of goals domestically for Motherwell. I think the thing that always worked against that. And there was obviously, I think his agent came out a month ago or so and said that Rangers had been interested in him. What would have always worked against him is at that stage in his career, I think he'd have wanted a one big last contract, obviously going back away from Motherwell, as you say, got the fee for that as well, Derek. So that would have come into it. If he'd been slightly younger, then maybe it would have been a bit of a different story. I agree with you that Rangers don't just need a striker; they need strikers. You saw Cyriel Dessers put on the provisional list for the African Cup of Nations as well. Yeah. What was that last week?
They might need 3 strikers.
Yeah, I know, which is but realistically, again, you look at
Sima will be away.
Yes, and Sima could well be away exactly. So, yeah, I mean, it is quite unbelievable the state of the squad that Rangers have at the moment. I think part of it has been, and we spoke about this in the past before, if you look at their central midfield options in particular, and Clement said this at the AGM, this Rangers squad was built very specifically, and they've hired managers who've played different styles. So there's always going to be that imbalance. That's not to say that there's not good players, and it's not to say that the other manager can't get good performances out of the players, because Clement has absolutely done that. But it is to say, if you look at the depth, if you look at a depth chart before and after Clement were to have arrived, and look at the positions that he plays, whether that be a right winger, and obviously that's enabled the emergence of Ross McCausland, but the centre of midfield in particular, whereas before you had 2 people for that number 6 position in Lundstram and Jack, and then you had 2 in Raskin and Cifuentes, and you had 2 in Dowell and Cantwell, and then some players behind that as well, Tom Lawrence, who could come and play in there, others who could drop down the line. Now you have just that number 6 position, and Cifuentes probably isn't his most natural position in there. We know about Ryan Jack's injury history. John Lundstram hasn't had that, but obviously had that kind of freak challenge, which has put him out of action. Nico Raskin as well, who was third or fourth game that Clement managed against Hearts, took a shot, and we haven't seen him since. So I do think part of this issue has been that, you know, Niels Koppen is now in place, but over a number of years and over a number of transfer windows, Rangers squad planning has been too sporadic. And as a result of that, you get into situations like this where you are trying to address that imbalance as Clement said at the AGM, and the striking position is going to be absolutely the key focus in January, because you've had the freak injury to Danilo. If Dessers goes, then, and if Dessers and Sima were both to go, and I don't know how likely it is that both of them go, because they've not played repeatedly for the country in recent years, but if their form was to keep up, then it's certainly a possibility. Then you're also looking at a left wing position. I know Rabbi Matondo's in there, and he's someone that
he looks like the Rabbi Matondo of last season, since he's came back.
I think he looks so unnatural on the right hand side,
making his way off at this moment in time.
Yeah. Well, I think he needs to play on the left hand side, and but I agree with you. He's not showed, but when he's come off the bench, when he came off the bench at the start of the season, I think it was in a certain game state where it was open and he could run in behind. We've not seen that so far, but I agree with you. For him to make that step to be a starter, you need to do it consistently. You need to do it in a variety of matches, and I think Rangers are much more reliant on Sima than perhaps we realise, not only in terms of his goals, but in the way he gets you out of pressure on the left-hand side, because the build-up's quite one-dimensional at points on that side, in the way that sometimes he can get you over the top and he can take on more than one man. Yes, he's not dribbling from the touchline and taking you by 3 or 4 players to get into the box, but I think Rangers have been hugely reliant on him doing almost the job of 2 men at points on that left-hand side, not least because of his defensive work. So fingers crossed he doesn't get called up. But yeah, it's a difficult situation at the top end of the pitch, and I think there's going to have to be quite a lot of work in January done to try and address that for the rest of the season.
Yeah, both Senegal and Nigeria will be going far in the competition. I think Nigeria in a group with Equatorial Guinea, Guinea-Bissau and Ivory Coast, so it's a given pretty much that they're going to qualify. I'm not sure who Senegal are in a group with, but if Sima gets called up, which I I think it's likely that he will be. Expect him to be away for some time. Just on the game tonight being cancelled, Greg Allen says it's no excuse for the game being off. Haven't they got covers at Ibrox? It's not due to the pitch at Ibrox, Greg. It's due to the weather conditions up north. Ross County unable to make it down to Glasgow for the game due to Storm Gerrit.
Derek, just on that, I noticed on Ross County's Twitter feed they have said that after negotiations with or discussions with Police Scotland,
yes,
they have asked for the game to be postponed. So there's clearly something going on in terms of their travel. I don't know if Police Scotland have said, do you know what, get this game off because we don't like the idea that it's 200 people driving down from Dingwall. It's just too dangerous. So hopefully they will come out and say a little bit more about exactly what has led to the decision-making process and how it came about. But they have specifically cited the conditions on the A9 and consultation with Police Scotland. So perhaps there's more to it than what we've been led to understand at this stage. But I think they need to open up and be a little bit more explanatory than that, because there was plenty of information out there as to why this game was going to be a difficult one for them to get down to, and the forecast and the warnings were all there. So I think we deserve a little bit more detail on that.
Yeah, I said at the top of the show, it's a professional football club. They should be looking at the weather conditions. It baffles me why they didn't take that into account and made sure they were down in Glasgow for the game as opposed to leaving on the day of the game. It just seems crazy to me. But like you, Johnny, hopefully we'll get a bit of an explanation. Might be
Derek,
from.
Can I throw something out there, Derek?
Yes.
What I find frustrating is the volume of games that is played at this time of year. Now, I know Scotland can be up and down in terms of weather, but why are we playing so few games in August? In late July, early August. I know there's European qualifiers and stuff like that, but surely it's a good opportunity when the weather's good and it's a lovely sunny day more often than it would be at this time of year. You know, you've got a much better chance of decent weather. Why is there less? Why are we more packed in terms of the fixture list at this time of year when we know it's going to be rank rotten to get around? We know what Scottish weather.
Summer football, Johnny.
Well, I think you can almost have summer football without having summer football. You know, take advantage of the opportunity to pack more games in early doors. You never know; it might get people fitter quicker for European competition. Start the season a little bit earlier and have a longer winter break. I've always kind of felt that was the answer.
Should they just scrap the winter break and stop trying to cram games in at this time and just have them more spread out?
Because they're not all focused around TV revenue. I know that it's not like Amazon where all the games are on TV tonight, but obviously Celtic on TV last night, yesterday afternoon, Rangers on TV the 24th, the Old Firm coming up, it's Edinburgh Derby tonight, isn't it? So that'll be my guess that it's the best time of the year to sell a subscription or day passes for TV packages, I'd imagine.
Yeah, no, you're spot on, Josh. Listen, they've got more of a captured audience, as simple as that.
Yeah.
A lot of people sitting down around their house on their sofas, stuffed to the gills full of food and drink, and just sitting there wanting to watch something on the telly. And of course, if there's Premier League games on or Premiership games on, I think there'll be a lot of people watching Hearts and Hibs tonight, for example, just because you know they wouldn't normally watch an Edinburgh Derby, but it's the 27th, so it's an ideal time for it. But I just think if we're talking about revenue for clubs, you know, if we're talking about getting people out onto the concourses ahead of the game, you know, eating, drinking, making more of an event of it, Scottish football needs to think a bit bigger about trying to hack fixtures in when you're actually able to have a reasonable time outside. Because we get to this point of the year and who wants to be out in this? That's diehard fandom. And if you've got a young kid, you know, I've got a 2-year-old, and let me tell you, you're not getting them out in weather like this. It's just a nightmare. So you've got to think about your family as well. And when you're a young guy and you can do it, obviously it doesn't matter. You can go to the pub for a few pints, get wrapped up, go to the game, no problem. But if we're serious about building a game for the future, a game that people become addicted to go in, week out. And I think you've got to really understand that there's a lot of pressures on people's time and money nowadays. And if they've got an option to spend their money elsewhere, then they will. And the prospect, I think, of travelling in weather like we've got just now, of sitting on the ground for an hour and 45 minutes, where you're effectively open to elements. I mean, Rangers fans, and listen, 95% of people watching this will be Rangers fans. Rangers fans are actually very lucky because Ibrox is you're quite protected from the elements. I mean, you guys will know, having been around Scottish football, it's not like it is at Ibrox in every ground. You know, there's quite a few where you're getting absolutely hammered. If you're in the main stand at Ibrox, you know, you're fairly covered. I mean, even at the press box, which is obviously at the bottom of the main stand, second tier, it has to be very, very rainy for that to be an issue, Josh. I know you
if the rain comes the wrong way though, which was I think it was the game. What was the recent? I think it may be in the St Johnstone game before that. If the wind's blowing the right way, then you're fine. If not, then it's a long.
It rarely does blow the wrong way.
You're right. It rarely does. Yeah. Point taken.
A lot of comments.
Anyway, that's my little kind of.
I think it's a good point, Johnny. As a fair point. I know that a lot of comments coming in saying that we should have the same schedule as Scandinavia. Aaron have the same schedule as Norway and Finland. Certainly for the spectators, it is. You don't want to be heading out when the weather is like this. You've got Ian Thompson in support of your comments today. Johnny says Johnny is on fire today. I agree with all his comments again. I don't know if that's a plant or whatever you or whether you own a fiver.
Wait a minute, Derek, because you need to go to Stephen McCulloch next.
Come on, Johnny. It is what it is. You're waffling, not going to change it. You're taking on it. McNulls probably would, I've got to say.
He's probably got a point.
Yeah, absolutely. But the big news then, folks, is that tonight's game against Ross County has been postponed. Will be rescheduled for a later date. It's not due to anything Rangers related. It's due to the adverse weather. Ross County, who have set off, unable to make it down to Glasgow for the game. So Rangers currently have 2 games in hand on Celtic heading into the game at Parkhead on Saturday. We'll be back again tomorrow morning. We begin the build-up to that game. The press conference will take place on Friday. Now there's a comment coming in, when is it the press conference and why wasn't there one yesterday? Clement just had a sort of extended one, didn't he, Joshua, at Fir Park, looking ahead to what was supposed to be the game tonight?
Yeah, I think why would probably be because it was Boxing Day, and there's kind of press or game activity on most days this week. So there was kind of held over stuff from the game of the 24th. So if you want to read that or watch that, you can do on the YouTube page and read it on the website as well. So yeah, we'll have lots of build up there. All full press conference coverage. Chris will be there as well. I'm sure we'll have a members video on the back of that press conference as well. And then on the day of the Old Firm, we'll have loads and loads of coverage before and after the game into the next day as well. Before what's Kilmarnock at Ibrox on the 2nd before the winter break, and then transfer window time and winter break time as well. So no prospect of football stopping over the next kind of couple of weeks, but we'll have loads and loads of coverage for you over on the website and the YouTube page as well.
See on that, Josh, can I throw a Brucey bonus last minute curveball in to get us talking about something?
All right, okay.
27th of December, right?
Yeah.
Transfer window opens in 4 days.
Yeah.
Derek, you go first. What are you hoping Santa brings Rangers? What are you looking for?
Realistic? Just a position, a player? Or...
No, yeah, I'm not expecting you to say, I want Messi, Salah, Romero at the back, bring him in.
Even on value with him anyway. I don't think they'd get a game. I think two strikers, Johnny, I think is absolutely essential. Rangers need to buy 2 strikers, and the quicker the better. They need to be brought in, if they can, the beginning of the transfer window, so they can go to the winter training camp in Spain.
I love this. Joshua doesn't know what a Brucey bonus is. Johnny says Super James Butler. Yeah. Joshua,
I've heard it. I know the saying, but I don't know I don't know where it comes from. Yeah.
Bruce Forsyth, Joshua.
Okay, the strictly presenter, was it?
Yeah.
Right,
He
okay.
no longer presents because his time has come and gone on this planet. But he was that's where the Brucey bonus comes from. But
right, okay.
How would you put it?
Yeah,
Josh, what about you?
My transfer window. I think, Johnny, that Niels Coppin coming in is a long term, and the noises that are coming out of Rangers about that, and having spoken to a few people who've worked with him, and what you hear about Coppin in general, it's clear that they want to try and access a wider scope of market. And they didn't want someone who'd just specialise in the British market. And I think that's the right decision. I think Rangers, for where they are in world football, but where they need to compete, there is no reason that they cannot try and access a wider range of markets that are a bit more untapped, and try and get ahead of the competition a little bit in that regard. But in terms of the January window, I actually think if you look at one of the transfer windows that Rangers have done better in the last few years, it was last January's window. I know it didn't carry Rangers to any more trophies, but it addressed areas, and it was both opportunistic in terms of Cantwell being a player that he shouldn't really have got, on the basis of if he was under contract, if he was in form, he'd have went for a lot of money and Rangers wouldn't have been able to get him. Similarly for Nico Raskin, who's very cheap at that time of year, and his contract was up. But they were players who were able to come in and make an immediate impact, and that's what Rangers need this season as well. If you look at the state of their squad, I think the summer is the time to properly recalibrate and have that long-term vision beyond the manager, which is important. I know that John Bennett spoke at the AGM about not recruiting for one man anymore. I'd argue that should have happened a long time ago, and it shouldn't be a recent learning, but it's important that happens. Rangers need to look even beyond Clement, because we know that despite the fact he's done such a good job so far, managers' lifespans are short, and if you recruit specifically to each and every manager, and I don't think Clement will want that, he said that repeatedly, but if you do that, you're going to get in the situation Rangers have been for the last number of years, where you're constantly tailoring the squad and never having the consistency, and it leaves you in these types of positions, even outside of their injury issues at the moment. They have a depth issue with where they have players in the squad. So positionally, you definitely need a striker. And I think you need a central midfielder. If you're being greedy, you probably want 3 all in, and you want another attacker who's got a bit of versatility. Maybe someone can play off the right-hand side as well, although Ross McCausland has done well. It's a long season, and remains to be seen what part Scott Wright can play in that. But you need to I think, get that blend that Rangers got last January, which was sign players who can come in and make an immediate impact, who have good resale value, who are affordable at the moment. You don't want the situation of the January window before, where it was kind of a bit more glitz and glamour, but wasn't able to kind of make the desired impact on the pitch.
Right, I'm going for 2 strikers.
Right.
I'd like to see Lawrence Shankland come in. I think I've made that pretty clear. A lone striker alongside him to give you backup, and hopefully someone with a bit of experience. The reason I like Kevin Van Veen, I've talked about this before, I always like an older head striker that comes in, that will be hungry for goals in every game, because he doesn't know how much goals he's got left in him.
Jermaine Defoe.
Sorry?
A Jermaine Defoe sort of character.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to come on to. If you look at what Jermaine Defoe did when it was at Ibrox, he was absolutely perfect. He wasn't knocking down the manager's door, demanding 25 to 30 games a season. But when he did come in, when the game was right, he was always dangerous. He was always good. I think someone like that alongside a Shankland would be really, really good for Rangers. I'd like to see Hadji come back, because I'm led to believe that Rangers could actually end that loan, bring him in. That would give you another midfield player. I'd be very interested to see what Philippe Clement could do with Yanis Hadji. If you look at his goal contribution in the 55 season, I think it was 29. Josh will tell me if I'm wrong or not, 28 or 29 between goals and assists. That's a very, very...
It was high. I don't know how high it was. I'll find out. But
you can find out. It was high. It was high. And that's a very... If it's 25 or 28, it's a very effective Scottish Premiership player. I think Yanis Hadji can provide that if he's playing as an 8 or playing as a 10. I'd like to see him back to add a little bit more to the midfield. But generally, take away from the fact that this midfield is not... doing well at the moment on the basis of injuries. I think you'll look at the depth that's there when everyone's fit. I think Rangers are okay in there. If you bring Hadji back, for me, that ticks a lot of boxes. And then finally, guys, no one's mentioned it in the comments. I'm just going to throw it out there. You know I love a hot take. I want to see Rangers go and sign a left back. I
What are you
think
going to say, Alfredo Morelos there?
No. I'm not having that, I'm afraid. I've not had enough eggnog with laced with vodka for that one. Don't want to upset anyone. But I'd like to see an athletic, physically powerful, direct left back who gets up and down and who can take the ball in tight situations. Maybe added to that. Get someone in there who can provide Rangers a different option. Listen, I'm going to put my cards on the table. Ridvan Yilmaz is not for me.
No, I agree, Johnny. I've seen enough now. I don't think he's the answer long term.
We're 18 months in.
Yeah.
It's not worked. There's little elements of there's a player in there. I just think you have to say at this point, Ridvan Yilmaz is never going to be a great fit for Scottish football. He's too small. He's always going to be targeted at the back post. He's a reasonably good football player, but I'm not sure if he's physically robust enough for this league. I think it's time to draw a line under that. I'd like to see Ridvan Yilmaz go out on loan with an option to buy, and I'm sure that if Rangers do that correctly, find a decent club for him to go to, they can get their money back on him. He's still a young man. But I really don't think it's going to work. Alongside that, I think Barisic has been reasonably good overall for Rangers over the course of the time there. But he's a perpetual frustration, I think, for fans. He's got that wonderful left peg, but there's so many aspects of his game that leave you tearing your hair out. I sit next to Joshua. He's a particular problem for Joshua at these games at Ibrox. You see him sort of shaking with anger when he turns back and plays the ball back when it's on for going forward. And I just like to see someone that's got more, that's just more direct, that just gets the ball and steams forward, and someone with that physicality, athleticism that Tavernier and Dujon Sterling both have at right back. Doesn't matter which of them plays. They're both physical monsters. They're machines, and I think Rangers lack that on the left-hand side. For me, that's a big one. I'd love to hear what you guys think about the left-back situation. I'd love to hear what the comments think about the left-back situation.
Yeah, there's a few coming in, and this is one I want to address because it's a boy that I know fairly well. Chris says, Beck on loan from Liverpool at Dundee for left-back looks a good shout. He's a decent player. He was on loan at Bolton last season. Didn't quite work for him due to, I think, it's just competition for places, but there's players that go out on loan. James Trafford is another one that was at Man City. Went to Accrington, had a poor loan spell there, picked up by Bolton, was terrific, and then was signed by Burnley in the summer for £15+ million. So just because they have one poor loan spell shouldn't be writing them off. I think he's doing pretty well at Dundee. I think that would be a fairly decent shout. I don't think Liverpool would be too difficult to deal with. That is so many comments are coming in saying, suggesting him. He is very direct, loves a tackle, loves putting the foot in. So that is one to keep an eye on. Certainly the left back situation, Joshua, is a position that Rangers will need to strengthen. Whether it's in January, it most definitely will be in the summer.
Yeah, I think Ridvan, the difficulty with Ridvan has been twofold for me. I think firstly, he still hasn't had, and you can say this is also down to availability and fitness, so it's probably a bit on him as well, but I don't think he's had a run of, and the European squad as well, but he's not had a run of kind of 10, 15 games in the team. I don't think he's ever really had that. I think the other thing that's worked against him is he's not really played in a style that I think suits him. If you look at what type of player he is, he's a combiner. He's not someone you really want to isolate and run up the wing and cross. His final ball isn't brilliant. I know he played that pass in for the first goal the Campbell's goal against Motherwell. Whether that was deliberate or not, I don't know. Give him the benefit of the doubt, maybe. But he's not. He's not the same as Barisic. You don't want to isolate him out wide. I think you want him to play ideally in a kind of wide triangle because he's got the ability to drive inside. He's got the ability to receive in between the lines a little bit. And I'd have liked to see more of that. I actually think if you look at Dessers' second or first offside goal, the one that Ridvan creates, that's exactly what he should be able to give you because he's a fullback who can move inside the pitch. That's not something that all fullbacks can do and create from there. What also has worked against him, I think size does come into it, and I'm not someone who likes to kind of overplay that side of things, but it's true that a lot of the teams you're going to play in Scotland are direct. We've seen that in the Hearts game. I don't think that's something that could never be got over. but it is something that we've seen teams target so far. If you're going to an Aberdeen away, for example, are you going to play Ridvan in there? Maybe not. He's still got probably resale value, especially back in Turkey. He's a Turkish international. I just think Derek, it's not as much as he's probably not been able to really set the header alight. He's not played quite in a system that suited him that well. If you look at what Rangers do on the right-hand side, and what you have in James Tavernier is someone who he can stay wide and do the crossing. He's not really going to build play and not going to move into a central midfield position deep, but you'll see him, especially in the home game against St Johnstone recently, he'll move into kind of become the third attacker in the line of five and invert in that position. He can move inside the pitch. He can pass or carry. Obviously, he's a high bar, but he's a fullback who you can just play him against any opponent. And I think that's what Rangers have lacked, kind of on the left-hand side of defence in general. I think Barisic, he's not... He's if you look at how fullbacks play now compared to 5-6 years ago, it's pretty different. Very few teams now use their fullbacks as kind of runners and crossers. They'll use them to supplement the midfield, or increasingly, if you look at how Arsenal or City use them in a variety of different manners. But more and more teams are playing with wingers. More and more teams, as football becomes more and more condensed, 1v1 specialists. And I think Barisic over the course has been a really good servant. I just think you need to evolve positions, and I think football is very different to when he came into the club. So I'd agree with Jonny that if Rangers were to be playing a different style, which was a little bit more fluid on the left-hand side, I think that would get more out of Ridvan. Have we seen enough to say he definitely is your first choice left-back and going forward? No, I don't think we have. And I do think the Rangers need consistency in that position, and they need someone who they can just play against any level of opponent, and they need someone who's dynamic, who can pass and carry the ball forward, and who can combine move inside, like we did see Ridvan do for that Dessers goal. So if he's still got a kind of good market value in Turkey, which you'd imagine that he does, again, he's an international. He's still only 22 years old. I think it's definitely an issue that a long-term thing that Rangers need to solve, that left-hand side of defence, because they've, alongside Tavernier and Goldson, they've not had kind of consistent players in there for a number of years. But you would say that their defensive record under Cologne actually really went under the radar. It's only 8 goals they've conceded over the course of 19 league games. I think I tweeted out it was 7 league clean sheets in 10 games under Clement.
That's so Leon Balogun. I'm going to just say that. That's Leon Balogun, mate. Leon Balogun should never have been let go by Giovanni Van Bronckhorst. And listen, I came on here and backed a decision to get rid of Leon Balogun because he'd had his injury ups and downs. I was totally wrong. Totally wrong, because the way he's playing now, he should just never have left. Leon King just wasn't ready. We felt like Balogun was getting in the way of King, and for me, that's just not the case. I think he's been outstanding alongside Connor Goldson. They've got a partnership, a genuine partnership. That's something that is underrated in football nowadays. Something we saw when I was a kid growing up. You had guys who played with each other week in, week out, and they became bigger and better than the sum of their parts. And I think Goldson and Balogun have that. They cover for each other. Balogun's always had the turn of pace. He's still got it. He's maybe not quite as quick as he was 2 years ago, but he's still pretty quick. And he's really good at reading and covering up and mopping up when Goldson does make an error. Not that he makes too many. And Goldson can then just play his natural game and knowing that he's got that cover, whereas I don't think he has that. Balogun's also physically very good in the air. It's no surprise to me that it's improved vastly since he's slotted in. I don't know what you guys think. I totally agree. Yeah, totally.
Jack Butland deserves a lot of credit as well. He's been sensational, I think.
Yeah. The biggest thing for Balogun for me is how the hell was he at Wigan for so? I mean, he should have been at a much higher level than that, like throughout his career.
I used to cover Wigan a great deal, right? And he was good, but he was prone to a clanger or two. He was caught at times in possession, and when Rangers signed him, I was thinking it's decent signing, but I was concerned that those mistakes would be punished, especially at the top level. But he's been superb for Rangers. So perhaps it was just that there is an error or two in him, but since he's come back into the side, it's been few and far between, hasn't it?
Yeah, he has had those games in the past. Think of Malmo, you think of Hibs, games where he kind of did properly sell the jersey. I do think as well, when Rangers, again, they're quite direct at the moment in their chance creation. Although Balogun's a really effective ball carrier. I think you will want to have a long-term solution in that area. But I just think it's a type of football at the moment that suits him. There's a lot of physical duels. As you say, he's got that consistency of partnership with Goldson. And beforehand, he was always rotated, obviously quite consistently with Helander, and even in that second season, he was rotated a lot. Even in the European run with Bassey, obviously initially got injured, which is how Bassey came into the centre back position in the first place. But I don't think he's really put the foot wrong whatsoever. He just seems in a really good vein of form. He did an interview we've got on the website after the game, speaking to the papers at Fir Park, and he was just speaking about how much he's appreciating being back and reflecting on different times in his careers where he's not always had it easy per se. He's quite a late bloomer in terms of getting consistent minutes at club level. He missed out, I think it was the 2014 World Cup, and lost his contract, was relegated all in one season. So I think he's someone who he's got a lot of experience, and that is one of the reasons that he was brought back as well for the role that he plays off the pitch. But you can't really ignore the fact that he wasn't playing before when Rangers had lost 3 games in 8, and it's not cut and dry because they're in a much better place now. But I totally agree with Jonny. I think he's been one of the big plus points for Clermont. You can't really argue with 7 clean sheets in 10. And we're going to do a bit more focus on Jack Butland in January, looking at his numbers, because he's obviously really hasn't put it wrong since he came to the club. And his goal saved above average is good, but it's not as if he's saved 6 or 7 goals above average. Rangers haven't conceded that many chances.
Well, Jonny, you were on last week, didn't you? And you said Rangers would have. Did you say Rangers would have won the league last season if Butland was in goal?
I think they would have had a much better chance of winning the league last season. I was actually kind of referring. I got myself mixed up. I was thinking about obviously the Gio's season.
Yeah, season before. I think.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair argument.
But I think they would have had a much better chance last season if you look at the goals that were thrown in across the 2 keepers. It just fundamentally wasn't good enough. Al McGregor shouldn't have been allowed to decide to stay for another season. He had the perfect send-off. Sometimes in football, you've got to be really ruthless, and I think it was time to be ruthless with Al McGregor. He had a amazing season at 55. The Europa League final season, he was good. He was excellent, actually, in the Europa League. He never let anyone down, made a few really big saves in that competition. But I think in the league, there was a few that you were thinking, we're starting to see a sort of regression in Al McGregor. And then last season, he was done. He was absolutely done. So to get Jack Butland in, I think he's been brilliant. I've already heard that Jack Butland's a player that's attracting interest. I think very, very quickly into his Rangers career, Jack Butland was attracting interest. I think Rangers felt, and I've talked about this on the podcast, I think people kind of laughed it off when I talked about this about 3 or 4 months ago. He's a player that will make Rangers money, I think, down the line, even if it's like 4 years down the line, because these players in the EPL, guys who are homegrown, are really, really valuable. Guys you can sit as the 3rd or the 4th keeper in the squad till they're 41. That can be a lucrative business, as
he's
several.
He's not going to fancy that, is he? He's not going to fancy that, is he?
No, but maybe he will when he's 35 and he's done 5 years at Rangers and he's got
I don't mind
trophies under his belt. But I suppose what I'm saying, Derek, is I think it's a really good deal because you're putting on the balance sheet an asset. Even though he's 30, that's very unusual. You're picking up someone at 30 and they're going to become a really, really good asset to the club. But he just looks psychologically and physically ready for this. He looks like he's been like a tiger that's been caged as a number 2. And he's come in desperate to win trophies, desperate to win games. I'll not be shocked in the slightest if there's offers from the Premier League for Jack Butland in the winter window. I don't think Jack Butland will want to go. I'll be honest. I absolutely don't think he'll want to go. I don't think he will leave. But he's a guy that has shown he really... I'm just going to say this. He should be actually at a higher level than Rangers. He should be playing in the Scottish Premiership. He should be playing at the very top level of the EPL based on what we've seen. Yeah, that's how good I think he's been.
Yeah, Man United spent £47 million on Onana. I'd rather have Jack Butland, so that tells you everything you need to know.
The exact point I was just about to make, Derek. Onana is absolutely amazing with the ball at his feet. There's no doubt about that. But he's a hopeless goalkeeper at times. Yeah. He's the ultimate Joshua Barry goalkeeper. You know, he's a footballer. He's terrific as a footballer, but as a shot stopper,
he was the best shot stopper in the Champions League last year. To be fair, I agree he's not been great this season, but I think
players go to Old Trafford to die. I think though, right enough. But
I think you need to consider the fact. I know that they won last night, but in terms of a graveyard shift, I think Old Trafford kind of defines that.
Not an easy place to play.
That's all about, for me, it's about smart recruitment, because Onana's weakness has always been coming for crosses. It's always been dealing with balls into the box at set plays. Yeah. You see the 2 goals Aston Villa score on the sideline. Austin McPhee, who's obviously Scotland's set play coordinator. Aston Villa's.
I know, it always surprised me he's lasted so long down there, but yeah.
Well, it's because they do really well from set plays. He is really good at his job. Yeah. And I think for both of them, Onana could have done better. And for me, Butland is a better keeper than Onana. Now, there's reasons why he's gone for so much. I think that the premium is put on players who can play it from the back now in goal, especially at the top level. But that's how highly I rate Jack Butland. And I think Rangers will have a fight on their hands in terms of big clubs coming in for him if he continues this level of form. And there's absolutely no reason why he won't continue this level of form. And actually, guys, that's one thing I would like to just throw in there. You know, I'm absolutely loving it today. I'm really enjoying this conversation. I know you two want to get away, but I don't. So I'm going to keep rolling on. But are we now getting to a situation, right, in all seriousness, where Michael Beale's summer transfer window is being reassessed a little bit? Because Balogun, we've said, is excellent. Butland, Kieran Dowell's coming on to a game. I mean,
if Sam Lammers comes on to a game, then I
don't think that's going to happen, Derek. I know it's the time for Christmas miracles and all that, but perhaps you're pushing it too far with that one. But Cyriel Dessers, as we've discussed, I mean, I was saying that I don't particularly rate Cyriel Dessers still, and that was causing a lot of controversy in the comments there. So there's a lot of people who have changed their mind on Cyriel Dessers.
Yeah.
So if you start to add up, it's only really Cifuentes and I think Lammers that have real question marks over them at this point. Or do you disagree with that? I would say for like the majority of
people, the money that's been spent on them, I think, they are. We can judge them come May, I think, and we can determine that if they've had a good season or not. But I think we've seen an upturn in the players' form since the new manager has arrived. So I think that's played a big part. Dujon Sterling, would we have seen him playing central midfield under Michael Beale? Doubt it. So I think who knows how history will look back on Michael Beale's time at Rangers and his recruitment. But certainly I think we were all discussing a few months ago that the rebuild needs a rebuild, and I'm not entirely sure that it needs to be totally ripped up and started again. Sam Lammers, if we can find a buyer for him next month, then absolutely superb. But Joshua, I know that you're needing to get away, so we won't hold you much longer.
Not because of that conversation point. Just going to see my grandparents. But apart from that, I do agree with Johnny's point. I think generally, I think you're right. I mean, I think there's some context in the fact that, you know, Sterling, is he going to be we've not actually seen him in his position. Like, long term, what's the solution there? But I think you can see there's a really good player there to be worked with. Lammers is obviously the outlier at the moment for the money you spent on him in that position. You need someone who's going to give you more in terms of numbers. Even if I like you, Johnny, I think you've seen flashes of what he can do. It's not as if he can't play football. I think you can see exactly why he's someone who's went for big fees in the past but hasn't been able to kick on, because he looks like you've rarely seen a player play without confidence quite as visibly. So I do agree overall. I think that the Rangers, and we said this when Clement was appointed, Rangers could not afford to have a transitional season. They couldn't afford to rebuild the rebuild. They couldn't afford to actually go out and have, I think, a very specific style of football like Muscat would have been, even if it would have been effective, because of the time it would have taken to build and the fact that squad wasn't built for it. They needed someone who would get the best of both worlds in the short term, and then hopefully be able to do the long-term thing, which ultimately is winning trophies. And there's obviously good players within that squad, even if after a night like Aris, Derek, that felt very far away. So it's a good point, but no, we'll save some conversation for 9:30 tomorrow morning and come back then.
I'm not on tomorrow morning. I'm just hoovering up all the talking points.
The thing is, I don't think those players would have the same conversation if a change of manager never took place. So I think Philip Clement deserves a lot of credit for turning around what looked like a failing and lopsided, still is lopsided squad, but he's worked pretty much a miracle with that group of players, and I'd imagine you'll be looking to strengthen next month. There was a couple of comments. No, I think that's us done with regards to the comments. I'm aware we've been on for well over an hour now. Johnny, is there anything else you want to get off your chest before we wrap up?
No, I'm done now. I'm going to hold my hands up and say I've got to go back to the family. So, yeah.
So we have a good Christmas, lads. Anyway, Santa, good to you both.
Yeah, I've been a bit ill, Derek, under the weather. So, I treated myself to 4 games on Amazon Prime yesterday. So, yeah, but it was a good day. Yeah, what about you?
Yeah. It was just family time for me. Like you, I watched the Man United Villa game yesterday. There's a few games on tonight, I think, down south, and as Johnny said, the Edinburgh Derby's on as well. So I am heading out to Warrington for a few jars, I think, because Boxing
Good
Day.
night out is Warrington.
Yes. So be careful out there, folks. Johnny, do you have a good Christmas? Yeah.
I did, mate. I did the classic mistake, which is I really got too relaxed on Christmas Eve, and the champagne was out, the white wine was out, the red wine was out, I had the craft beers out, and then once that's all been out, then it just becomes a total free for all, and I started pouring myself cocktails, and
wow,
it became messy, and I've got really no recollection of Christmas Eve from about 10 p.m. till about going to bed at 1 p.m. So yeah, my Christmas Day was kind of ruined, I've got to be honest, because I was just pretty hungover. My wife wasn't too happy because I've got a 2-year-old running about causing chaos, and I was lying on the couch going so not advised to do that, folks. Stay off the booze.
Yeah, there you go, folks. Some wise words from Johnny. Francis says, love the pod today, guys. Made the long journey back home more enjoyable. Thank you very much for your kind words, Francis. And just a quick word for our podcast sponsors before we forget. The MPH Group, folks, if you're looking for some home improvements heading into the new year, give these guys a call. And every deal that you opt for, you automatically get entered into a wonderful giveaway over in Cancun in Mexico. So I'll pop the all-important links in the description below. Josh just thinks, shut up, guys. He absolutely is. He's got grandparents to go in and meet, as Gary Hillhouse says, so he's got things to do. But yeah, an hour and 12 minutes. It's been absolutely brilliant being on the show, folks. Just a quick reminder, the headline news. No game tonight, unfortunately. Ross County unable to make it down to Glasgow due to Storm Gerrit. So the next game will be that Old Firm encounter on Saturday lunchtime. We will be back tomorrow morning, me and Joshua. We hope you can join us then. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Bye for now.